I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Item 2, board business. A, discussion and possible action regarding School Health Advisory Council SHAC bylaws. Oh, the time was 5:30. And board policy BDF local. We've had some people sign up to speak. So at this time, the board will receive comments from those individuals who signed up to speak to the specific agenda item. Speakers will be called up to speak in order in which they appear on the sign-in sheet and to the item that they signed up to speak to. Speakers should limit their comments to the specific agenda item for which they signed up. Please remember that this is a business meeting of the board. Any person or group engaging in outbursts of any kind causing a disruption to the meeting will be warned, and if they persist, will be removed from the meeting. This is to ensure that all speakers have an opportunity to make comments without interruption and that the board members are able to pay full attention to speakers without any distractions. Mrs. Huey.
Number 1. Number 1.
Everyone was given a number when they signed in, and we're calling you to speak by the number.
Go to the next one.
Yes, Mr. Osborne. The podium.
Good evening. My name is Michael Osborne. I live in District 1. The items posted on the website were deficient, though a tad more complete than the printed agenda in the foyer. They referred to attached proposals to be considered and scheduled to be voted on in this meeting. The public is afforded comment on the agenda items, but absent any disclosures of what the specific changes are, public comments are out of ignorance due to lack of transparency and lack of information by procedure and design. I was told that the info cannot be made public before the board sees it, though the proposals were developed by the board president, evidently in secret, since the board doesn't have committee meetings. Since these proposals were also developed by staff, according to the website, then folks other than board members were privy to the proposals and apparently the sources of any leaks and attendant rumors. I urge the board to get back to their work and task of education away from the indoctrination in critical race theory and permissive immorality so that we don't continue on the downward spiral of failed elementary schools that existed before COVID and continue to infect us with the current failure of Larkspur Elementary, and which is the nexus of the admitted mental health problems in the district. I don't see how the board can intelligently consider proposals when first seen at a single board meeting or discuss them with their constituents that they represent, much less vote on them. God bless you.
Number 2.
What Mr. Osborne just described was a violation of the Open Meetings Act. State law prohibits...
Please state your name.
Nathan Morgan. State law prohibits occupying more than one position of authority simultaneously to forestall conflicts of interest and competing loyalties. Lower level governing bodies will say the law doesn't apply, but that doesn't escape the moral depravity of doing so. We put you in these positions with the expectation that you would have the strength of character to perform in a respectable manner, which leads us to why this meeting was called. It would appear as if that a willful violation of public trust is about to play out before our very eyes. Instead of engaging every member of this board, and the public, I might add, and the good people of this community in the selection of representatives to occupy committee positions critical to the quality and standards of the education of our children, we are faced with being railroaded into approving the appointment of people we know little about. This is the kind of meeting that should be held in a train station. I'll leave it at that.
Number 3.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Montoya. I'd like to begin by just acknowledging the work that you guys do. I know it's not easy to sit up here and you get a lot of complaints, and I do appreciate that you guys take time out of your own personal lives to be here. Now, with that being said, I'm not only a parent of 2 NEISD students, one in elementary school and one in high school, but I'm also a proud graduate of Madison High School, so I've been around this district for quite a long time. I've always loved NEISD. My husband and I made a very deliberate decision to have our children in this district. But as a parent, I must say that I have become awoken to some things that are quite concerning. I also have family members, coworkers, former classmates, and many friends whom have made the same decision to stay within this district. So I'm fortunate to know people in each of your trustee zones. Now, while I realize you cannot answer all of my questions in this forum, I would like to inquire about your thoughts on parent involvement. I was doing some research and noticed that PTA meetings are all held in the evening, as is this meeting. From my research, it appears that typically the PTA meetings are between 6 and 7 in the evening, as is this at times when people can attend. So I'm curious why the SHAC meetings are not held at a time when more parents can be actively involved. From my understanding, those are also during the day. A lot of parents work. I have many friends, and myself included, who would be interested in joining a committee, but I can't take off work in the middle of the day. It's just not feasible all the time. So I'm curious as to why those meetings are not at a time where more parents can be involved. It was suggested to me that perhaps there's something you're trying to hide, and while I don't want to believe that there's malicious intents, it does make me wonder why. Why are all these other meetings with parent involvement in a time when more parents can be involved? I'm also curious how the SHAC members for this district are chosen. I was part of a member of the audience in one of the meetings where it appears as though you guys each pick people from your individual districts. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but that was my understanding. So I'm just curious how you go about picking them. Ms. Gronek, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that you're also part of that committee, and it seems to be a little bit of a conflict of interest to have you serving on multiple boards when that position could be occupied by a parent. I've attended these meetings. I've watched online when I'm not able to attend. I'm one of those that, when the bride's walking down the aisle, I look at the groom. When people are up here talking, I watch you guys. And I wonder sometimes if you even like the parents that you're representing. It makes me really just curious. If you know the parents, if you like the parents, if you're really interested in looking out for their best interests and the interest of the students that we have in this district. Some of those parents...
That's time.
Thank you.
Number 4.
Like she said, I wanted to thank you all for all the work that you do and the time that you volunteer out of your busy lives. My name's Brandon Broom. I'm actually a physician in the community, two kids in the district. Mr. Hilliard did a community outreach program recently, and I was fortunate to go there. And I think if y'all aren't doing this already, I encourage you to do this. I think COVID has really opened a lot of parents' eyes to things that in the past we didn't pay attention to. We just assumed everything is taken care of. Like you're hearing from other boards across the country, your parents are more involved now. I think they're seeing virtual schooling. They're seeing what's going on. They're hearing some other agendas, like the first speaker mentioned, with certain things that maybe some parents may not want, some may. I started getting the feeling after talking with Mr. Hilliard's little community outreach thing that there's a lot of parents out there wanting and willing to get involved. And this was the first I had heard of Shaq, because when I mentioned that I wanted to get involved, he said, yes, please come do it. As a physician, I think there's a lot of physicians in the community that would love to be involved with Shaq in particular. But I think rather than, getting up here and pointing fingers and attacking any of y'all for anything, that's what the parents are here for, is to have meetings like this and collectively let you hear what your district is. And even from a healthcare standpoint, standard of care here in Dallas or Florida or wherever it may be is going to be different. And so what are we doing out there? What is the best practice? What's the best for our kids going forward? And how can we as parents help? And my main reason for coming here is just to have another body here on our side to hope that you guys know that, hey, there's people out here wanting to support, they're wanting to help, they're wanting to make a positive difference in our kids' lives for future generations, just like y'all, and that's the reason you're all sitting up here. But I hope that this thing gets better. I wasn't sure what was going to be on the agenda, but seeing the different items that are up there for vote tonight for Shaq, I hope that this thing can just get nothing but stronger going forward. And just please know that I've signed up to help with Mr. Hilliard, and I am happy to help recruit other healthcare providers in the community any way we can to make this a better place going forward. So thanks.
Number 5.
Hi, I'm Tina Castellanos, and I had 2 kids graduate from MacArthur and one that's now homeschooling but was at MacArthur. And I was actually on the Shaq for 6 years. I think that's a voice that maybe doesn't get heard as often, but I was on the Shaq, and I was on the sex ed committee that worked on the last sex ed curriculum. I listened to your last meeting, and I think it would be a really good idea to learn how processes have been done in the past. I heard a lot of, this is what we should do. The Shaq has functioned really well for a really long time. It wasn't non-functioning in the time that I was there. It was actually really highly functioning. I heard Mr. Hilliard talk about not having so many staff members on the Shaq, and I will share with you, they all serve a purpose. They all serve a role. They are there not only because it matters to their department, right? So 3 nutrition people being on the Shaq, they come, they speak, and they present. They offer advice and support. And they also are being informed by parents and by the other people on the Shaq and taking that back to their department. I work for the state. I'm in maternal and child health, and so I have a background in teen sexuality, sex ed, and health curriculum, and that's part of why I volunteered. When I hear people say people didn't know about the Shaq, well, people don't know about a lot of things because they don't necessarily read everything that gets sent home. These things do get sent home. I volunteered for the Shaq because it was put out by NEISD that they were looking for Shaq members. It is put out to the public. That choice is yours for the taking. It's not that it, isn't out there and it isn't open to people, right? So we need to acknowledge that it's been open, those opportunities have been there, and that work has been done, and that some really good work has been done. I have a concern hearing people say, especially Mr. Hilliard, say, my people, I get to choose these people. I'm worried that you're opening the NEISD Shaq and NEISD up to litigation on racial and socioeconomic bias. That's what I saw in the sex ed discussion, was people in Johnson saying, well, we have a 0 birth rate, so why do we have to have sex ed? Why can't it just be Lee who has this birth rate? Johnson has a 0 birth rate because parents in Johnson can afford birth control and abortion. You should open your eyes to those facts and realize that. It is not ethics or morals, it is economics. And so you saying that you would like to choose people, I'm worried that you're going to choose wealthy white people, and those are not going to be representative of who's in NEISD. That's all I
Okay.
have.
Thank you.
Number 6.
Good evening. My name is Karen Lenartz, and I'm the parent of 2 former NEISD students, also a former Shaq member for many years. The board has veered away from the sole focus of improving all students and staff. Instead, members try to impose their individual beliefs throughout the district. We have lost the continuity of the board to work together towards common goals, that will benefit all students, not just one group of students. After serving on SHAC for many years, I feel that you are undermining the work that was put in and the efforts of many people to think bigger than themselves and to think of all students. Once you appoint your selected few to SHAC, will you then demand specific committees for them to sit on? If this is about the betterment of all of our students, not necessarily our personal views, then we must support all students, their backgrounds, and their needs as a whole. Thank you.
Number 7.
Hi, my name's Jacqueline Klein. Simple question, who's on the SHAC? Should it require an ORR that was filed in a timely manner that can't be answered by the district? A simple who's on the SHAC and what board trustees appointed them. It's outrageous to me that we would have any trustees sitting up on the dais who would not be allowed to appoint every single SHAC representative to the committee that represents their single member district. The voters came out in May and they elected new board members. They elected new representation. And if you keep in place everybody who is here that was supported by a bunch of trustees who got voted out, all that their voters are getting is the illusion of representation. This board has been operated in violation of bylaws that we have had questions about for years. Now, I suggest that this entire committee be wiped out and reappointed annually. People age in that want to participate, people move out, people graduate. There's any number of reasons that you would need to vet every committee member again, given the nature and the importance of what they are considering and what they are handing down for the district. So the bottom line is, I am just here to petition you to let every single member up here appoint every single member from their district to the SHAC.
Number 8.
Hi, my name is Kim Wynn, and I have been an educator. I just retired in May after 40 years of teaching. I've taught at the elementary level, middle school level, high school level, and college level. I was born into the Northeast District. I raised 3 children in the Northeast District, and my 3-month-old grandson was just born living in the Northeast District. It's all very important. This is a superb district with superb education. The background to all education, I am convinced, after 40 years of teaching, is curriculum. You need to choose a good curriculum. You need to instruct your teachers on how to deliver that curriculum, and it needs to be a curriculum that parents are comfortable with. Because of that, the one letter in the acronym SHAC that, in my opinion, is the most important is advisory. SHAC should be an advisory committee, and from what I have researched, the one point I am against in SHAC, it is not equal distribution of representation across the district. Each single member district should be equally represented and advise what they think is best for the district as a whole. In this way, you get a continuum of education throughout the district that everyone can be proud of. I urge you to make sure that representation is equal across every one of the single member districts. Thank you.
Number 9.
Hi, I'm Victor Tobard, District 1, and that's Lee. I'm sorry, District 3. My apologies. I'm a newly appointed SHAC member under Councilwoman Villarreal, and it's been brought to my attention some certain things that are going on. And I have to admit that I've been very apathetic to these kind of meetings in my past, and I apologize for that. But as I understand it, in section 28004, I believe it is, it states that the majority of the SHAC appointees should be parents of kids in the district. And when my research showed that that's not the case, it's mostly staff. And in fact, some council members are actually putting forth recommendations for other council members in their districts. So that's very unfair. And I don't have any problem with y'all as individual council members putting in the people that you want, because I trust that you'll have a good representation of the people within your district, the parents and or staff. But when the staff outnumbers in many cases the parents, that's not good representation. These are our kids in the schools. And we want to protect our kids. We got 60,000 students in this district. And now I'm a man on fire, ready to kind of make sure that you're all doing your jobs correctly. And I want y'all to consider what y'all been doing in this last year or so, and my research shows that things aren't being done according to what the bylaws are, and for that matter, what are the bylaws? Where are they presented? Where are they online? I saw a pattern of things being done one way prior to 2020, 2021, but then in these last couple of years, things are being done very different, where some person is saying, oh, I'll put some staff members over there for your section over in whatever district. And that's just not right. It's not the right representation that we should be aspiring to or appointing people to, because it's not fair. And so I am going to hold each and every one of you accountable. For example, in my district, there was only one parent that was represented for Lee. One parent. That is highly unfair. I don't know how that happened, but be sure that I'm going to hold every one of y'all accountable. We're going to be watching y'all very closely, how y'all are doing this and how you're working in this district. I respect you, and I respect that you're going to go forward doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so late this afternoon, Mrs. Turner sent out an email with Mr. Hilliard's proposed BDF local. Did everybody get that email and have an opportunity to see that? Or it's in our packet as well? I just saw it right now. Okay. So this action item is to talk about BDF local, and it's also to talk about SHAC bylaws. So I think that the first question that I have is, if we have bylaws, do we need a BDF local? Do we think that we need to have, because when I worked, I asked Dr. Micah some questions when I came up with this BDF local about, because at the last board meeting, we had talked about perhaps reducing the number of staff that were on SHAC. So I had reached out to him because I got on TASB and I could not find a template for BDF local. And so he had Yvonne reach out to TASB, and they did not have a template for BDF local because that was not something that they considered needing a policy for, because they felt like BDF legal covered everything that we needed to do. So that's why I pulled other districts that did have a BDF local. I found 3 out of about 20 that I looked at that had a BDF local. Most of theirs were very generic, and all they talked about was the citizens advisory committees. They did not specifically talk about SHAC. So when I created this little one-pager, it was basically to look at what would be the main things that we would want specific to our district that would not be covered in the BDF legal or bylaws. So that's where, how I came up with that. And I don't know, Mr. Hilliard, if you worked with anyone to come up with your recommendation or how you came about that.
I just looked at, Madam President, to answer your question. I looked at yours, and what I saw from what you proposed at least was 21 members, 14 parents, 7 staff, that each trustee gets one parent, and then the principal clusters get a parent, and then there was the piece that went on and the 7 staff. So, obviously, previously we had 50 members, although the list we got actually had 51 slots in it, this last draft that came up to us. But my concern is that, one, the board appoints, and we're elected to represent the community values that people have expressed concerns, and I'm talking about the law in 28004, not necessarily my person. We should all get people that will be representative of our communities and work collaborative, like I said last time, with all of the people on there. So what I proposed to also align with the BDF and the bylaws is a 30-member shack, which would be 21 parents, all by trustees, 7 community members, because remember, the community, 70% of our community pays taxes but does not have kids in the school. Our district scorecard talks about engagement and involvement. This is a huge opportunity for direct engagement and involvement for community members who definitely have a stake in this district and want to see good. We've had some of the folks that just spoke to us as well that now would be in the community member category, but that care about this district. And once again, this would be each trustee picking that community member, and then we also tying back to the bylaws, because there's a few things in the bylaws I think could get updated, but that's maybe part of this conversation or not. But that's what I came up with today after confirming with the lawyer that we were allowed to send these drafts, because I wasn't sure we were able to because of Open Meetings Act concerns. But he confirmed that we can do it as long as we don't talk about outside of meetings, which was part of my concern for the other discussion, why I didn't send those other policies previously, because I didn't think we could. But the real point being is that we're putting the emphasis on the board, because we are responsive to our communities. The cluster principals, that's great. And also, it's been the case before 2020, all the way back to at least 2016, as you talked about at the 2017 board meeting. Every August or September, you get a list from PE and Health, and then the board members select them. If they can't, then they go to the principal clusters to get them. And the email back in 2020, so from 2016 to 2020, and this was an email from Ms. Naylor to you just saying, as is our practice every year, I'm letting you know the number of members we need for each cluster, listed below, and program level preference so that we get variety and diversity. So the board may appoint individuals to the shack. If the board is unable to appoint any of those slots, please let me know and I'll be happy to reach out to the principals. So that had been the process for a long time. First year I got on the board, last year I asked the questions, we had 12 names, some of them didn't live in the district. The process went differently without the board discussing it. It went through, I believe, Mr. Jimenez to the principals. And so the longstanding process and practice of the board selecting their individuals, and if unable, then of course we go to Dr. Mike and say, hey, could you help me with a parent slot or a community member slot? We're doing it. So what I proposed in my BDF local was what I believe is the most equitable. 7 co-equals, we get to decide. And if we can't, then we gladly can ask Dr. Micah, not everyone still has kids in the districts, and we have different level of contact with our parents and community members. But that was the genesis of mine that I just drafted this afternoon, kind of taking off of yours. But if we talk about the bylaws as the baseline, then first we have to acknowledge that we have bylaws. They haven't been used, I think, since 2017 when BDF regulation came into effect. But we have to, as a board, agree that these are actually active. The last time they were acted on and amended was 2012, November 12, 2012. So we have to decide as a board which way we're going to go, because we also have to have the process of everybody appointing chairs and doing the process. So I think we need to be very clear either way, because remember last year I asked for BDF local and everybody was adamant except for me, the previous board, some of y'all were not here, that we didn't need a BDF local. So, and here we are a year later now saying we need one. And we also need to have 2 readings like we do for all of our other policies. Our BF local states that, because we could have had this conversation and clarified this a long time ago. So I'm open to other members' inputs, but to me, at the end of the day, is 20 years says the board shall ensure, so that's our responsibility. And then if we can't, then we go to the principals. But the draft BDF that you had, I have an issue with the cluster principals deciding that. Plus, we have 10 principals who which one decides and why if there's multiples. So I think we need to own it. It is our advisory committee. The staff gets to do everything else. 99% of what we see comes from the staff input. And I think I put two staff members on there, but realize staff can come and brief anything that they need and help. And of course, the member comment made out here by the public member, of course, what they hear, they can also utilize in their day-to-day as well. But the reality is this is supposed to be parent and community-led. And so we need to do that. We can also discuss the timing of the meetings, because it is true, when the people I was talking to, I said, could you make meetings during the day, because that's when they hold the shack meetings, not at night. But those are the discussions. So I think a BDFR is local is not a bad idea, to be very clear. Or if we're gonna do the bylaws, then we need to be very clear, and there's some couple things in there, and particularly section 4 membership about the vacancies being delegated to the shack committee if there's vacancies and stuff, and attendance issues and all that stuff. I think we need to retain that authority, and we as trustees have the final say. We can get recommendations, of course, but we need to be very clear on the process. So I'm done talking. I'm open to other people's comments on that.
I absolutely agree with what he's saying. The only thing is, in my particular situation, after what's been revealed to me, in my community, and I'm very upset about this, my community has had one shack member that actually lived in my district in this entire time that shack has been, and that's the only recorded one. That effectively silences the voices of my community. We have been disrespected. We have been shut down. Our voices have not been heard. And I frankly feel like we need to keep our board or our shack committee at 50 as it was originally set out. I personally have 7 people that I want on this shack. And I feel like we need to right the wrongs that have been done to our SMD3 district. And my parents are upset because they have not been given the voices. The people have just been installed and, throughout the years. It's as if we are just sidelined, and we are, I guess, not intelligent enough to help make these decisions, which are critical throughout our district. So I want the 50. I want each of us to select our own. I feel like we're all elected. We're all equal in this. And our communities need to be represented from our communities. And it's not going to be, rich white people making these decisions. It's going to be somebody that is going to be from our district, and it's going to be people that are, one of my principals is I want on that shack. So, we have a lot of good people, and I want my district represented.
Well, and Mrs. Virella, to your point, I brought an alternate, which was my original based on our 50 members. It's a blank sheet. Every trustee has 4 people. You write the names of your 4 parents that live in the district in your boundaries, have a student, and obviously our employees. And then each trustee gets 2, I call them community or open slots, and it can be anybody, clergy, medical, senior citizen, whatever we want, to not debate who put on who when way back in the day, because some of these people have been on for a long time, all good people willing to serve. But that way we have the majority of parent and community, and then there would be 7 staff members, and I left a single trustee on there because that's what's in the bylaws. And then that trustee position, eventually we would rotate annually, and then we would do 2-year staggered terms, because we do need continuity, but we also need more voices in the conversation, and we need fresh voices, but we also need some continuity so that we can do it. And of course the bylaws allow any trustee to continue to appoint a parent, or in this case a community member, for multiple terms if we deem appropriately. Each year we say, you're doing good work, let's keep doing that. You're working on the recess program, or you're working on the nutrition, so let's keep you on for another 2 years, so you'd maybe get 4 years. But at the end of the day is we, the trustees, decide who it is, and then we make sure that we have the bylaws going, and this would keep it at 50 members and would allow a broad representation, because we have 7 distinct districts, as we've talked about multiple times, and Dr. Mike has, and then they all come together, what's best for all the kids, not any kid in any one cluster, or my kid or your kid, whatever. It is what's best for our community and our district, and we need all those voices. We need that parent and community voices, and it perfectly aligns with our district scorecard for that engagement and feedback. And so that would be the other option, is we all write a list and we hand it to Dr. Micah tomorrow, and they can continue the work of the shacks. I know that was a concern Mrs. Grona had expressed with this going on. But that way we have equal representation. We don't have to sit here and debate about why you picked 2 or so, or why this person's been on here, this clergy or this senior citizen or this nonprofit. It is very clear. We each decide, and we're accountable to our constituents at the end of the day, right? That's what we're publicly elected the board authority in 28004 that we have this advisory committee to reflect the community values. And so we have to choose how best to do it. Whether we choose to utilize a principal, that's fine. But at the end of the day, is each trustee makes a decision for him or herself, and then we, as a board corporate, trust one another as 7 co-equals to put people on there, and then we move forward. And then we have the 7 staff members that would help. And I can pass this around if people want to see what it looks like. But that would be the other option if we want to keep 50. But I don't know if we want to do 50, 30.
I want 50.
I don't know what other
I
people.
feel like
so-
if we consolidate, this is a very important committee. And there needs to be multiple types of voices through the community. It's not just, for it. And I want to keep the 4 parents, I want it, the administration. I want that. I want the, but I want my 7. I do not feel comfortable allowing us to shrink the shack, give over control totally to the staff, because that is not why our constituents elected us. They elected us to make sure that we took care of things like this.
And I don't think anybody's looking to give the whole committee over to the staff. I mean, because right now
That's what this sounded like. With this page that was right here, we were going to be allowed 1 person, and then everybody else was going to have control over everything else. That is not why we were elected. And we have to remember this. We have to remember our voice in this community, because this is why we were elected. So I like every one of you. This is nothing personal against any of you. I respect every one of you. But my community has been wronged. And I want this right. I want this to be righted. I want to make this right for my community and give them back their voices.
So it gets into, similar to that comment, like how do we define, how do we integrate the magnet schools? The people that are spending their time
already done
and
it.
money and effort in those
I
areas.
added.
And it's more of a question.
I've got. Okay, for example, this is my list of people. They are highly qualified. They are a part of our community. This would represent my community, okay, which we have had no representation. And I have represented with one of my magnet programs. And I've done 4 parents that are the SMD3 or parents. Those are people who live in my district. I have an administrator. I have my magnet parent. I have it. Everything is. Matter of fact, I have this. I've made more copies to give to each one of you. However, I have to face my constituents, and I made a promise to these people that I would take care of their kids. I would represent them. I would represent our parents. I would represent our children. I would represent the staff in administration, and I would incorporate all of that.
So can I speak?
Yeah, sure.
Or David, were you finished? I will tell you the rationale behind having a principal select somebody, because they know their entire community, right? I would offer that.
2 of these people on this list are from the principal.
Let her finish. Go ahead, Mrs. Brown.
Okay. I actually remember in the past we had an application that if people wanted to be on SHAC, they filled out an application. And I believe they went through an interview process. I don't remember that specifically. But I think that by having the principal allowed to select a parent, it opens up, because I know a lot of people in my community, but I don't know everybody, right? I mean, so I think giving principals the opportunity to take in applications from parents. So every year they could push out something to their school that says SHAC has, a vacancy or a term limit, or somebody has, and then they can have parents send in an application. And then those cluster principals can go through and say, you know what, this person is, and I believe, Ms. Aguilar, will you help me on the application? Was there something that asked why they wanted to be on SHAC, or if they were interested in a specific thing, or do you have access to that old?
I'll need to pull it out.
Okay. It's okay.
Ms. Green, I have two questions. When's the last time those applications were done? Because I've never seen one.
That's what I'm saying.
And the other question would be is I think principals could definitely collect it, but then it should come to the trustees so that we can call and sort through, because I've had multiple parents say I'd like to serve, and I like to reach out to everybody and talk to everybody. I went through a process of going out through the band community, my Leadership Northeast person, they made recommendations and reaching out, because I'm trying to get a broad net, because you're right, we don't know everybody. But once again, also a lot of our staff, including principals, don't live in our district either. Once again, they know the community. But at the end of the day, this is a board authority thing. So we can set up a process where applications are come in and then we as trustees do it, but we have the final authority and accountability to our community. So, but to just say, nope, they get to pick, I am against that personally. I can't speak for any other trustee, but to me, this is on us. This is our one board committee. We also have CBAC, but that we have the responsibility. They advise us. And the goal is that they do that. So they can get the people, and then we would look at them. And I have no problem doing that, because it would make it logistically easier. And Dr. Micah could send out the email at the beginning of the year to the entire district saying, here's the application process. If you're in this SMD, this is who you send it to, whichever principal, collate, and then we get it. We have a month to call people, kind of get a feel and say, that's great, because we need more voices. I want a wide variety of voices. I want the community. We need to cover all aspects. Diversity of thought, diversity of background, life experiences, all those things is important. It doesn't need to be a monolithic, just quite the opposite. But we need more voices. But we 7 right here need to make sure that we're equally represented and that we have the say from my perspective. Unless I think you want to talk, but that's my concern with letting the principals appoint. I'm not for that.
And all I wanted to say is I am not opposed to having the principal send me recommendations for who they would choose. But I'm looking at 20 new emails I received from various people in the community who are interested in becoming part of the SHAC. And if we have 10 principals in our cluster, which principal gets to make a recommendation? So ultimately, I'm responsible for the decision that's made, and ultimately, that decision falls on me for my community.
Sorry, my bag.
We
Did
have
you?
20 new emails asking to be on check, or 20 new emails just saying that we need to be a little more equitable and all that? So, because I know we haven't gotten that many asking to be on check. We've gotten several letting us know that we need to be equitable and we need to check the bylaws and that kind of thing.
Lots of.
That's
Now, I don't know that they're all in my district. They may not be.
okay.
But I have received a lot of emails. Most of them don't tell me where they're from.
Okay. Okay.
So some of, I guess some of the comments, and I don't want to get into an argument. I like being civil here. But I would support something that's consistent with Texas Education Code. And I have the code that I put up right here. It appears to me that the current bylaws are consistent with that. I just got the proposal like at 5:30. Looks like it was emailed at 2:30. I was working. But, in looking at the Texas Education Code, it allows for the Board of Trustees of each school district to establish the SHAC. It stipulates, who should be on the SHAC, what staff and parents, and that the majority, yes, shall be parents. The Board of Trustees shall appoint at least, not a maximum, but at least 5 members to the local school health advisory council. Now, it says the Board of Trustees, not each board member. And, I take it to be flexible. So as a board member, of course, yes, this is my second term, not my third term, but my second term. Most of the first term was, we all went through COVID, right? So I knew I had appointments or there were vacancies, as everyone was able to see at the last meeting. Roosevelt Cluster had vacancies. I reached out to find those who lived in the district. Although it didn't stipulate that I had to do that, my mindset is, okay, let me reach out to those that meet the requirements as far as having students in the cluster and they live in the district. Talk to them, talk to each person that's on this list this evening. So I guess I say all that to say my expectation is that each board member does the same. Now, I don't know, if the previous District 3 representative did that or not, or the one before him.
I don't know
But
that either.
I'm sorry, if I can finish, and then whatever comments anyone else wants to make, everyone can do that. But I'm just saying, I don't know what my predecessor did as well. I just know, what I can do in my mindset and what this allows me to do as well. So
I don't know what my predecessor did or what anybody did. I just know that my district has not been represented. And this is a wrong that should have been addressed years ago. And now that I'm aware of it, it's a wrong that I'm determined to make right. And I'm sorry if I'm coming across as being aggressive about this, but I feel like my community has been shut down and shut out.
But to clarify, or let me try and clarify, the people that were on SHAC representing your district were at magnet schools in your district?
From what I understand,
because it wasn't somebody from...
These were people that did not hit... I've only had apparently one person, one parent this entire time that SHAC has been, in this district that represented my district, that was an actual parent in the district. There was only one. And apparently a lot of, I don't know why, the previous board members did not get upset about this. I don't know. I don't understand why.
Well, I think some of it is because it was representation by ISA, STEM, NISA. So I believe that is probably...
Well, I want my people in my district to have the voice that they elected me to give them.
I understand.
Mrs. Wood, I want to follow up. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said the bylaws. So you agree that the bylaws, we have bylaws? Because bylaws have been absent since 2017, but you said the bylaws lay out how we do this. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you stating that we do have bylaws and they're effective or not? Because we obviously got a copy in our emails, but I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what you said.
I'm looking at the bylaws that was sent in our board packet.
Okay, but they haven't been used for the last, you've been on the board since 2017, I believe, right? Is that correct? And
I was elected in 2018.
2018, okay, so since 2017, these have not been used, and even when I asked about them last year, they said a staff member, they decided, well, I've gotten two different answers. One, it went away in 2017, and the other, last meeting, I was told in 2012 they went away. It was determined, but the board never took any action to do so. So we haven't been following these bylaws, which has been one of my big concerns that I've been highlighting. So we need to have a clear written process, which I offer these have been. In fact, we haven't been following them. We have identified staggered terms and do all that stuff, which is that draft list I did would identify the terms, and we have very, very good clarity on all of this. So that's the first thing the board needs to, I guess, either reconcile is, do we have bylaws and agree that they are active and that we are going to follow them? Because they have not been followed. And this got me started as a parent, and then as a board member, I've been asking these questions, And last year, the process was out the window, 12 names showed up, and, you know, the answer was, I don't know how the names showed up. This process has not been clear to the community. We should be able, everybody should go, here it is, here's our process, here's our written rules, with the BDF local bylaws, however, but we haven't been doing that.
So I think we found bylaws, and so I think the purpose is to say,
Well, they never went
I mean-
away. What happened? I guess my question is, no, please. No, this is serious. There's lots of things going on. We don't know all the mitigating factors. Let's give everybody grace and the benefit of the doubt. Some of y'all have been here for a long time, but in 2016, there was parent concern, right? Then 2017, in August of 2017, I have open records, previous predecessor to Mrs. Aguilar made a BDF BDF regulation, and then the bylaws disappeared, and they have not been followed since. And that said the shack is closed, 30 to 50 members. There's some other stipulations, that BDF regulation, which is still posted. But the concern is that the trustees, we, the board, have that authority, and only we, in Article 1, can amend or establish them or amend them. But they never were. There's never been a board vote since November 2012 to do anything with them. So they've been active, but they haven't been used, and that's a huge concern that I've expressed multiple times. And like I brought up last November when I said we need a BDF local because there were no bylaws. I don't know where they were found. And I want to say this, Ms. Aguilar, you're doing a great job back there. She walked into a situation with a lot of tradition, but with not a lot as much written. But this stuff has been here, and so we've got to get this right. And that's what the real push. And I know we're trying to tonight, but are we agreeing that bylaws are in effect? Are we going to talk about that specifically because they haven't been followed?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Look, I guess from my perspective, because as you and I have spoken, Mr. Hilliard, over time, and some others, there were some problems along the line. It's very clear. I've always been very honest and upfront with all of you, correct? I mean, if I know it, I'm going to be honest about it. I don't know why certain things happen in the past. I've done my best. Ms. Villarreal, when you asked me a question about a different topic, I went back as far as I could go to find you the answers. Sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. I don't know why certain things happened. I don't. I wish I did. Because for some of the questions that we all have, I have those same things. And I want some type of closure because the answer, at least I'll understand it. I just don't right now. I wish I could, okay? Mm-hmm. But all I can say, I guess, to you all this evening, the actors are different now. Mm-hmm. All right? I appreciate you taking a moment to recognize Miss Aguilar because she is doing her very best in a situation trying to understand historically why things were done. And for as many answers as she can find me, there are those that she simply cannot, right? And I agree with you. This evening, you know, you all have an opportunity. And I appreciate what all of you have said because, look, and we've had this discussion, right? We are a diverse community with a lot of people. And it's important that those voices are at the table, right? Because in the end, we need to make certain that our community is providing input. If you'll recall, I shared with you all during convocation that we should look at parents as the HOV lane. They need to get in the car. Now, look, that doesn't always mean we're going to agree with each other. I'm a parent, too. I don't always agree with some things. I just simply don't, right? But I guess my thing is this. We can focus on what happened, and we can really admire this for a while, like I have. But I would love for you all to come because what I respect the most about this board, each one of you, you've all been talking about respect, is that you all have diversity in thought. You really do. The 7 of you come from such different backgrounds with different perspectives. And that's a great thing because our community looks just like that. But what I want to encourage you this evening and encourage our community, Mr. Hilliard, you've talked about this off and on since you've come on, is coming together and uniting us, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we've got that opportunity. So I'll just leave you with this, and I'm going to stop because really, this evening's really about you all. But I just want you all to keep in mind that the diversity in thought within you and our district can divide us, or we can come together unified in purpose. And I really encourage all of us to come together and look, we're going to disagree, and that's okay. I disagree constantly with those two folks over there. But in the end, we get unified in our purpose of what we're trying to do is deliver a high-quality education. And if we've messed up, we messed up and we own it and we try to fix it. And I appreciate what you're saying, Ms. Villarreal, because I think it's important that we acknowledge that you have a valid concern, right? And then the question becomes, so how do we move forward from here?
Yep.
That's it. And I don't know the answer, and I can't give it to you.
I appreciate that perspective. Right? I'll offer this. I say we keep it at 50. I have the draft, 4 parents, each trustee does, 2 parent or community open members, as long as they reside within the district, are over 18 and can pass a background check. 7 staff members that are listed on there, and keep 1 trustee. That keeps our current structure, keeps continuity. Each trustee has accountability. We retain at the board authority, and we make sure the bylaws are in effect and followed. That's my proposal going forward, to keep it clean, to do this, because there was concern you expressed, Mrs. Groen, about having to tell these parents, I don't want to tell them we can't serve after we promised them, which that's a different conversation. But the 21 members cuts that number in half, and we have less community voice, we have no community voice in this on the BDF local you recommended, and we have very few parent voices. To me, let's keep the umbrella big. Let's get all of them together to collaborate to come up with what's best for the kids, because they're all going to have different perspectives. We all know different people. We appoint. If we don't know, we ask Dr. Micah to get recommendations. And then what we do going forward is we can talk about how we want to get that input and feedback. Because I think it'd be great, because lots of parents want to get involved. And so that we start having a process where they can provide that feedback through principals to us. And then we can, each year we'll have time to figure it out. That's what I would offer going forward. It's equitable, 7 co-equal, good broad representation across all of the clusters, and it gives flexibility to each trustee to pick that person because they may have somebody that they think is value added from that community or open membership.
I guess part of my thought process in reducing the number was, is it quality versus quantity? 50 seems like a lot of people. As I was going through bylaws and of other districts, it seemed like 30 was about the number that some had. I didn't see any that had 50. I'm trying to explain the rationale of where I was coming up with that number, because I was thinking, is 50 really a manageable number?
Well, that's a great question, because the subcommittees, because if you only have 1 or 2 parents now, you're talking about them doing a lion's share of the work, in particular whoever's going to be doing the curriculum this year, whereas you can spread that work out, and you also need more input, I would offer. So 30 even. Now we've got 3 parents and a community member, so now you've got 4 each subcommittee, plus or minus, actually 5 or 6 is the 4 main subcommittees.
And I kind of like the 3 per trustee, because then one of the other questions or topics that I wanted to talk about was the subcommittees that we have, because currently we have 4. And is there a way to make 3 subcommittees and have, and I'm sorry, I've got papers everywhere. I'll find that in just a minute. But then each trustee could have a board member. Each trustee could have a parent on each, if you had 3 subcommittees. So then each subcommittee is represented by every cluster.
I think it's a great idea.
That is,
if it works at the level for Mrs. Aguilar and the staff to manage that, but I think it's great. And then each parent has different interests. Some have nutrition, some want the exercise piece, some will want curriculum. I think it's a great idea. It's equal representation. That's a great idea.
But I think then if we said, okay, each, you don't want all 3 Johnson ones on the same subcommittee.
Agree. 3 of my 4 were on the same committee, and so that's a huge problem, because then you lose the
then
continuity piece.
So then you could spread it out and have that. So, that, again, my thing was just a starting point to begin the discussion.
Well, okay.
So
I'll make a motion to approve my BDF local as written.
but that's going to 50?
No, that's going to 30.
Can we continue discussion before we
we
get a motion? Okay,
Yeah,
because I really think that there was more talking that needed to be done. I didn't know. David, I
Well,
know
I
you had
was gonna,
started something earlier and didn't
weigh
get
in
to
with
finish.
the number, and I think part of my concern is if we get like more than 3, there's a potential that you might have every 2 years have 8 or more people on the committee turnover if we're giving them, let's say, 2 year or 4. As long, because our trustee since our terms are 4 years and we have staggered elections, you could end up losing a pretty high amount of people every year if a new trustee comes in and says, well, I want now my 4 people on there. And so for continuity, if we, I kind of was thinking, well, if we have less people that we get to appoint, not to limit the voices, but to have, let's say 3 sounds like a good number, but we start having a little more continuity every time this committee turns over.
There's a trade-off. Go ahead, Marcy. There's a trade-off. I understand the point you're making.
And so it's a little bit. I think 7's too many per, and I'm not sure that, can we have staff appoint a principal or an administrator to the, I don't think
The law
that's-
actually
It
doesn't
is in
say, it
one
just
of
makes
them.
recommended, it only says five
Yeah.
must be parents. The other ones, it makes recommendations, or it says none of the above categories.
Sorry, that was.
Yeah, no, that's a good.
That was a bit of an aside there. Sorry.
Yeah.
I got
No,
a little
it's a good
sidetracked.
question though, because.
But I think if we keep it to a limited amount, I think then every 2 years we have less sort of turnover on that committee to where we get some continuity. We'll have new voices on that committee potentially, but it's not going to be half of the people that we all selected or appointed.
Well, it works out the same whether or not, I mean, the percentages are the same, whether you put 3 people on there or you put 7 people on there, because you just have a wider scope.
Yeah.
So no matter what, if 7 people were removed at one time, you still have 43 more that you can deal
it
with.
could potentially be 21 people at one time.
But it just, well, this
Or
is
it
true.
could be actually times 4, so it could be
Well,
28.
and Mr. Byard, the reason I put the stagger in there so that we would have at least 1 year turnover, so that you could have continuity, because we do need continuity in some of that corporate knowledge. You don't want to lose it all at one time.
Yeah.
And that was the alternate proposal if we kept all 50, is that we do stagger 2 years, and then you have to work that out.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just being on other committees in the past, when you get to a certain number, you get sometimes paralysis of committee, where you have so many people that there's a lot of people that decide they just don't want to do anything, and so that, well, everybody else will take care of it. And so I know we like to think everybody's going to participate fully 100% all of the time, but I know in the past I've had people appointed that wouldn't show up to the meetings. And so I think if we get a smaller group that is committed to it, that we end up having a group that's going to really look in and participate in this.
That's not necessarily true, because let's face it, we've all done group projects in university where,
Absolutely.
basically you have 7 people and 1 person or 2 people are doing the work.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a dynamic that we cannot erase. My concern is by consolidating it down and removing the 50, that we are removing a lot of the voices that we could have. What I want to see is diversity on this thing. I want to see where each one of us, because I have a very unique district. You have a very unique district. We all do. And I don't think that 3 people out of that district is going to be enough to represent our districts. Remember, we have 60,000 kids in this. Is it too much to ask that each of us have 7 members that represent our district?
So
Is that
7
too
times
much?
7 is 49.
Right, and then we have
And so then
one-
you're adding the staff people? I mean, so then you're going to have a shack that's over 50.
Well, no,
we don't have to have
because
staff on there at all. They can just be advisory and make presentations and not be voting members. She's saying she had 1%.
I already have, the way I broke this down, I have my 4 parents, I have my magnet parent, I have an administrator. So in a sense, what I've done is I've created, this doing, within the rules and the guidelines, but these are people within my community. But I also have a magnet parent, which represents the magnet program.
Mr. Donut, would you be open to 6 members? Because that alternate I had 4 parents, and then 2 open, which can be community, clergy, magnet, whatever the other trustees want. Put 7 staff on there, because that provides some continuity to, I think that's what's been passed around. So that would still get us about 50, but it would be 42 parent and community members, which is what this is, the focus of this is, to get their voice. It's not 7, it's 6 each, but is that something you think you could live with?
Well, right
Because
at
we have
this,
to-
at this point, because we have been so unrepresented in my community, I'm going to be a little bit hard-nosed about this one, because my community has been so shunted aside, and there's no representation in my SMD3, and my parents are upset. So it's just, I want to rectify that wrong, and I think by even cutting one voice away from that, I think it's a slap in the face, because we have been so wronged in my district.
Mrs. Huey, Mrs. Williams, what do y'all think a number is, Mr. Byer? I mean, everyone, because we're still have different numbers, because we got to at some point get to consensus, I think. Mrs. Groen, whatever you think, you said 30 a minute ago, kind of like what I was thinking may be an option, but I think we need to all start just kind of figuring out where we want to go as a board.
So I'm just going to say, I'm not ready on this at all. There's a lot more that needs to be done. What are the best practices? Over the weekend, I looked at, okay, what is Northside, doing? I wasn't able to find their bylaws, but I also saw they had a whole handbook on their website. Okay, they had an application process. I also looked at what is SA. Those are comparable districts. Okay, what is of course Northside is almost twice as large as ours, with 100,000 or so kids. What is San Antonio ISD doing as well? They have an application process. It's a Google Doc type of form. It asks pertinent questions. The bylaws was not online. I wasn't able to get those. But it looks like we're trying to piecemeal something, based on our individual needs. Also, when we go back to TEC statute, it states that the Board of Trustees may also, however it says may appoint 1 or more persons from each of the different categories: classroom teachers, school counselors, school administrators, district students, and so forth. A long list of 11 to choose, from. It doesn't say it has to be all 11, but can go from there. I would recommend, and I don't know if we can do this, excuse me, but I would recommend if we can form an ad hoc committee of 3 to flesh this out, to do look at the best practices, come back with a full set of, if need be, revised bylaws, and then a full new PDF local to then discuss and have the full gamut of everything, instead of trying to come up with arbitrary numbers of how many should be on there, and how it should be done. Otherwise, I mean, we'll be here all night.
Ms. Williams, I'm on board. I'll volunteer to be one of the 3. I mean, I've obviously spent a lot of time doing research, so I think that's not a bad idea.
I knew you would.
Well, no, I mean, I've done a lot of research. I've been looking at stuff for a long time, and we come back with a clean, and this is the new set. Everybody's in agreement. Everything's written, and we flesh out the details, like you say, what makes sense, what's going to work best, so that the board gets that good advice that we need, as the law says, and that we have that consistent process that equally represents all of our 7 single-member districts. So I know it's going to slow things down, which is a concern for some, but at the same time we need to get this right. And as Dr. Micah said, this is our chance, this board, to set it, not relitigate the past, but let's be clear going forward, and let's make sure we're all in agreement that something that we as a board can agree to, so that it's very clear and agreed upon.
So let me say this, I don't want to hold up anything. Do we have to, because although, not perfect, we do have a BDF local, although.
No, we don't.
We don't. So what I looked up.
We have a BDF-R.
So what I saw was not our BDF local.
That was a draft.
That was
That's
dated
what I.
November.
That was
I'm
just
sorry.
a talking point.
I saw something that was dated November 8, 2021. on Tasby?
Mr. Lopez, we've never done, in my experience, we've not done ad hoc committees in the past. Can we do that for this purpose?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
That is absolutely a possibility. The board can take action to do that, to specifically form a committee of 3 of you to determine and make recommendations on BDF, bylaws, whether you want to just get rid of bylaws and incorporate it all into BDF. I mean, it's really up to you because
Okay.
the education code gives you that opportunity. So
Okay.
yes, you can do that.
Okay.
At this point, I don't think that that would be a fair or equitable situation to put all that into 3 board members, because where
Well,
we're.
they're not they
It
can't.
has to come back to us.
It has to come back to us to
understand, but I
approve.
think that all of us need a say in this, because where we are now is in the reason why my community is so upset is because there's been too much that has been done and the power has been consolidated among just a few, and then the rest of the board is just kind of like whatever.
No, that is not what I'm proposing. An ad hoc committee takes everything that was discussed here into consideration, takes Mr. Hilliard's proposal, takes any other information, puts it together into one document, brings it back to the board for full discussion and consideration. That way you have a full document, not pieces of what we're trying to infuse or inject or anything. So there is full board discussion and consensus. It's not,
Just a clean document,
Right.
fully updated, that we think is a good starting point, and then we can finalize it from there, is what I think you're suggesting, Mr. Williams.
So the other thing I'm asking, I guess, is I don't want to hold up item B on appointments with developing an ad hoc and bringing this back so that we have a BDF local, and I apologize, I was looking at BDF legal. But would that hold up the appointments? Because, so let me ask, if everyone, what I'm looking at here, it appears that everyone was able to make or submit names in appointments.
I have mine here.
The list mine is old, but I have the names right here of the individuals, both the parents, and then I had the community members that would fit in some of the other slots as well, the nonprofits.
So what was in the board packet is not correct?
That was the draft that was sent. That was the most recent one, but no, they did not, because I had a feeling we were gonna have this discussion, so I have my names right here, but I did not actually send them forward because I didn't know where we were gonna go with this conversation after seeing the BDF local recommendation from Mrs. Grona and changing that, because I prioritized my list based on what may or may not come, so.
So the names that are here, could
Those are
you
old names.
substitute? So could you substitute some of the names that you have
I
to
absolutely
put on
could.
those?
Yeah, I absolutely have those names, and I also have a name for the nonprofit. But then that gets to the bigger conversation of these people that are on here. Are they going to stay on here the rest of the year then? Because now we're back to where we were, and we're another year out of that situation. So,
I mean, you still have the opportunity to nominate those folks to represent your district. Am I right?
So this is a working document, and somebody could, when we get to that item, somebody could make a motion to approve the list, and then somebody could second it, and then somebody could amend it, and, we could work through changing names if people wanted to change names.
So then,
that-
if we do that, we're basically saying these people are on for the rest of this year, is, I guess, my question that I'm asking. If we approve this list, then we're basically saying we agree to keep these people at least through the end of this year, because obviously we can't break it we're already deep into the year. We just should have, that fact it wasn't addressed earlier, it doesn't matter at this point. But we would be tacitly saying we're going to stick with the names on here for the rest of this school year.
Well, I think what President Grona mentioned is that you can change out names tonight.
I understand that, but then the question becomes I would offer in the categories when we get into the clergy nonprofits. Some of those, once again, in multiple district slots. So we can.
What I would recommend is that Ms.
Do we need to save
maybe-
the discussion for that?
We probably need to
particular
save
item.
discussion for that particular item. So, but I think we can do an ad hoc committee and still work through that item B.
And I think, Mr. Hilliard, to your point, what I'm kind of working through in my mind is that would mean those individuals on the list tonight, however we agree to that, would end up going through the end of the year. Whatever happens to the ad hoc committee and whatever our discussions are for BDF, regulation, local bylaws, whatever that might be, that might change that particular approach. And so.
For the next school
For the
year.
next
It would
school
be,
year, or
next year,
however
would
we
be, could
decide.
possibly be a full reset, but
That's-
we
it's
do a
possible.
methodical, strategic method, depending on what the board
It's
agrees to.
possible. So that's how I'm kind of envisioning that. I mean, just in what we're discussing right now.
Understand.
And so,
At this
or at least
point-
that's how it's playing out in my mind.
At this point, because of what has been done to my community, I'm going to have to insist that the people from my SMD3 community that live in my community be put on this committee.
Okay, well,
I
let's
think
talk
that's
about
we're
that
gonna
when we get to that item.
That agenda, that's the next agenda item, so
We will, I think
right.
we're going to do amendments to the names.
Right
if I understand.
now, I think, just to
So I
kind of
think-
bring it back, we've got the
So I-
bylaws and BDF on our
Yeah.
So,
agenda right
do I need to
now.
make a motion to approve an ad hoc committee of 3 trustees to discuss everything associated with bylaws, BDF local possibilities, the law, to come back to the board with a comprehensive plan for further discussion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Now, do we need to determine who the 3 are on that ad
I
hoc
would
right
say,
now?
yes, ma'am, I would
Yes.
say we do.
Well, that's.
Oh, wait.
Well, can we,
Mr. Lopez, just because it's not listed, are they, I just
Oh,
don't want
we-
y'all to violate something for an open record.
Oh, because it's not
Yeah,
on.
well,
Open
I mean,
Meetings
what
Act.
we need to do is make sure that it is consistent with you are doing the ad hoc committee and naming the trustees, because that's the action you're taking with respect to these bylaws and with respect to the review and consideration of whether BDF local will be done. So you can appoint those trustees as kind of a secondary motion, which really goes part and parcel with what you just did.
Okay.
So all of that is all for the purpose of examining that issue. So I would recommend to the board, so that the process can get started, that you would name the 3 trustees or select the 3 trustees amongst yourselves here in this meeting, so that work can commence.
As a motion and second and vote on it?
Yes, and all in connection with the same agenda item.
Okay.
And to be clear, knowing that this is coming back to the full board, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're.
Yes, the ad hoc committee cannot, as a matter of law,
Yes.
the ad hoc committee cannot actually implement anything.
Right.
All it can do is meet. It can obviously do the work, and it has to come back to the full board for final approval. So the ad hoc committee, whatever they bring to you, the board could look at it, say, yeah, great work, we're rejecting it.
Oh.
Or great work, we're going to take some of it and change some of it. I mean, that's kind of the purpose. But this way, you come back with a plan comprehensively that at least 3 of you have worked on, and then from there, the rest of the board can discuss it and take final action.
Okay.
I'd like to volunteer to be on that committee as well.
Okay.
I'll volunteer as well.
Okay.
I'll volunteer.
Okay. All right. So I have Ms. Williams, Mr. Hilliard, and Ms. Villarreal. Do I have a motion to approve those 3 for the ad hoc committee?
I move to approve, yes, I approve to move the 3 names just listed for the ad hoc, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Viral, and myself, Mr. Hilliard, for the ad hoc committee.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
I'm sorry, who was the second on that? I got the first. Oh, the second was Marshall.
It's close.
Ms. Landry.
Okay, so now, I'm sorry, let me get rid of some of this stuff. Let's talk about item B, discussion and possible action regarding School Health Advisory Council SHAC member appointments. So I would recommend that we allow Ms. Villarreal to submit her 4 names for the parents. I think at this point, there is, I'm not working off the right list, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Madam Grimm, I have 3 names I want to swap out, and I also have a name for the nonprofit business representative that is currently blank.
Okay, so there's 1 nonprofit, and then you want to do
3 of the 4.
3
in
of
my thing,
your
I can submit those names as well.
names.
I've typed these up and I made enough copies for all the board, so I don't know if you guys need them
Do you,
or.
what I would ask is that you just state the 3 parents' names.
Is it 3 or 4?
You got 4.
Oh,
You got
4.
4, I got 3.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's 4. Hang on
Okay.
just a minute, I'm working off the wrong list, I'm sorry. Okay,
Okay, Jessica Esslinger,
okay,
Victor Tobar, Ronald Scheibe.
say
And
one more time, spell it,
It's
please.
Ronald, S is in Sam, C is in cat, H, E, I, B, E.
Okay.
And Ryan O'Donnell.
Okay, Mr. Hilliard, you wanted to replace 3 parents, is that
Yes.
correct?
Looking at page 8 of our draft, the first name will be replaced by Tricia Stephen, Stephan. The second name will be replaced by Brandon Broome, Broome. The third name at the top of page 9, Ms. Parker will stay. And then the last name will be replaced by last name's Murphy, Stephanie Murphy. And then for the nonprofit blank business, I have Mrs. Dina Riley, Riley. First name's Dina, Dina.
Say that one more time.
Dina Riley, Dina's first name, last name's Riley, Riley. She lives in the district. Kids at graduate, she's been quite involved.
And what's her nonprofit?
Salvation Army.
Okay, and I know that there had been we had gotten some emails with some concern about replacing those parents in the Reagan cluster because of community values and reflecting different community values. We had an email from a parent. So I guess if you could just explain to everyone why you felt like these existing parents didn't meet those.
I'll be careful in my words because once again, under Robert's Rules of Order, we don't question people's motives, but I'll still answer that. One was an attendance issue for one of them.
Okay.
Missed many meetings, like 3
Okay.
of 13. The other one's been on there for a very long time, and for most of that time was an employee, which that, once again, very nice person, and I've already recommended her for something else. And so that was that. One of the names I asked last year because I thought I was going to get multiple names. And so she's been waiting for a year. And the other person, I spoke to all of them, all good conversations, understands and know what they were working on. And this is about being able to board authority under 20004 when it talks about community values. It's not that any of them have done anything wrong, but I wanted some continuity and some opportunities for more voices to be included in these programs. They've all been long serving, and we're going on their 5th year. So they've obviously had an opportunity to make an impact, but I want some opportunities for these other folks as well to continue to add to that collaboration across the district and continue to build what's best for all of our kids.
Okay. And just to clarify, regarding the sub, I had asked Mr. Lopez about that. I don't think they're considered an employee because they're not, technically, they have to accept the call to take the job. They don't have benefits. There's no guaranteed of employment with them. So I know there had been some question about whether we were violating that with substitutes on the list. but-
Yeah, and that was obviously passed. That parent is no longer actively substituting, but once again,
Okay.
they've been on them for quite a long time. So that is a good point because we did pay all of our substitutes. So that's actually a good clarification. So substitute teachers are allowed to be, because I had one other parent member that is a substitute and wanted to also serve, but I said, I don't think I can do that as a parent slot because of that. So is that legally correct? Substitutes are not considered employees under the 28004 requirement? Just to make sure I understand going forward, because this is a good piece we need to clarify because we have lots of substitute parents that are involved in our schools and are a great asset.
Sure, and typically, no, substitute teachers are not considered full-time or even part-time employees of the district. They're really almost like contractors in a way.
Okay.
So in that sense, substitutes could serve on this committee. I don't think the intent of the statute was really to keep somebody who's a full-time employee or somebody who's got some sort of contractual relationship with the district to keep
That's
them
good
serving.
information for the ad hoc committee as well. We could clearly state that as an option too going forward.
Could I ask, though, as we're talking about the statements that you made about community values and things like that, I would just ask that we watch our wording in the future on things like that. Those comments came across as implying that the current members did not represent good values, and I would strongly disagree with that. That seemed to imply that maybe they were immoral or something else, and I would really prefer not to imply that people are
Ms.
not
Ito,
representing our community
point-
that truly are.
point-
And these people have put in a lot of time. They are the part of the glue of our community. So that made me extremely uncomfortable. At the same time, I'd like to recognize that the Shack has been working very effectively and very efficiently for a long time, and I really think we need to honor the work that those people have done for the last several years under some very trying circumstances, under some things that none of us ever expected would happen, and they have stood up and done an amazing job.
Agreed. And when I said community values, I was referring to the law, and I did not articulate well, and I will apologize for that. I spoke to all of them. I was trying to be clear about the board authority and the processes because we didn't have anything written and that stuff. They have all contributed. They are all very good, and they're all very dedicated parents, and I agree 100%. And all of that. And some of them also expressed that some things have been stuck in the Shack for years. So that's something else that we can discuss separately about some of these initiatives that have been going on that have taken a long time to come to fruition. So more efficiency as the board gets briefed, make sure they got the assets they need to get stuff done. But I agree with you, and I do apologize for misspeaking because it can't come across that way. And I saw the emails as well, and I talked to everybody. So I will own that comment. But thank you for making that statement.
Yeah, it's just a reminder to all of us that that our comments are taken
Certainly.
sometimes mistaken, but
I didn't articulate well, very much, and I own that.
Yeah, and I have too much respect for the parents that have put in so much on this, even the ones that you felt did not represent your single member district. I feel that where they may not have lived in your single member district, I hope that they did represent the Lee community.
I'm quite sure they did,
Yeah.
and as I said in the meeting prior to this, I'm sure they're absolutely lovely people. However, because of what's been done to my community, it makes me a little upset because I take it very personally. I feel like we have not been represented and our voices have not been heard. Before I got on this board, had I known that the people that were representing my district were not in my district, you would have had the same response from me, okay? Because this is something that, all of you have people in your district representing your district, but I don't. And it's very hurtful. And so I apologize, and I apologize to all of you if I came off aggressive tonight. I do, and I don't mean to. But I take this very personally. That we feel we're just kind of like the runt of the litter, I guess you might say, and I don't like that. And that being said, are we going to be able to put, for example, I have a magnet parent who's incredibly devoted to our district, a wonderful parent, lovely. I have an administrator who I absolutely adore, and I would like to put her on there. And I have a community member who would add such valuable contribution to this, this organization, this committee. And I was wondering, are we going to be able to put those on there? I know you allowed me to put my parent, and I appreciate that.
Shouldn't we wait until the ad hoc
I
bill
would
comes
offer,
back?
I would offer that,
Yeah,
I think
let's-
for, I guess, a little bit of bridging the gap between where we are and where we're going, if we have our 4 parents, and I've got some questions here in a second about staff and some of the others, but I think that is a good starting point to keep those names on tap, to say when we, if and when we do change anything, that we have the ability, that you've got a, for lack of a better term, Rolodex of people that you know are interested and you know that will step up and show up and participate. And so, you know, any of us that may have replaced people on SHAC in this last couple of months, I would highly suggest, as Mr. Hilliard did, I'm assuming that's what you meant by this, it reached out to those people to talk to them. Because knowing the people that, even though they may not have been in your district, or they've been on it for a long time, that they have put in hours and hours worth of work, and even though they may not live in your district, they are still passionate about this district and all the students. So even though they might be in a magnet program, they might go to your cluster schools, they are just as invested in that community. They go to the football games, they go to the organizations, the band competitions. I think because it is our board authority that we give them we provide them the opportunity to tell them, you're being replaced, or you're not going to be on the SHAC anymore. I think we owe that to them. So
I agree
that's
completely,
that's what I'm
and that's out of respect. And as I said, I have nothing but respect for the people that are being replaced tonight. However, because of what's been done to my district, it's necessary. So, and regretfully, it breaks my heart that I have to tell them that they're no longer going to be on there. But in order to serve my district and right the wrongs, this is something I have no choice on.
If I may, I do have a couple of questions about sort of the staff. And in hopefully I can do this, bridging what was in the previous discussion. I'm curious about the district's, or Ms. Groner, your draft as far as who those 7 people would be from staff, paring that down, because I know we've had some
do you have your
concerns
list?
about too many people. I have it in front of me, yes.
Okay. So, as we're going through the district employees, and when Dr. Micah and I talked, because he had I met with Ms. Aguilar and Mr. Jimenez about this, I think the best way to do it is by department, because the person may change. So I'm going to go down the right-hand column.
Okay.
And correct me if I misspeak somewhere, but the first person that or do you want to do it? No. Oh.
Miss Aguilar, are you listening so that I get this right? Thank you.
So that we all get it right. Okay, so the first person that I have was in my 7 was the NEISD Guidance Services.
Okay.
The next person that I had was NEISD Health Services, which was Emma Kelly, just as we're going down. The next one was NEISD School Administration. The next one was NEISD NEPD. The next one was NEISD Health Services. The next one was NEISD School Nutrition Services.
It's 2 health
Oh,
services.
you said health services.
You said health services
we
twice.
had 2 there.
I mean, there are 2 slots, but do you want 2 health services or just spread it out with nutrition and some of
Is that right? Did I mess up?
Miss Aguilar, is that what we discussed?
Okay, so I may have.
Okay.
I may have not X'd it off.
Come on up here, Miss Aguilar. Just as we go through, because it's been a while and I don't have that sheet with me.
Oh.
So let's just make sure we're accurate.
Because nutrition services would make sense as one, because obviously.
Okay, so then at the bottom, maybe that's where I messed up. NEISD School Nutrition Services.
That would be 5. Okay, that's as good.
And then NEISD PE and Health Department, NEISD PE and Health Department. And then, was it the NEISD Student Leadership and Wellbeing?
I think the one that we looked at previously was NEISD Communications, because that was a SHAC goal
Okay.
previously. So I think that might be the one that was their goal, to have a communications person on the committee.
But then everybody else would be, so on that BDF local where I think I said resource member, so it was like the content expert.
Right.
So,
So the one that I remember this, and Ms. Aguilar, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we discussed school nutrition not being on there, as they could come in and present as needed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because they have a survey every year, am I correct?
Well, they direct the wellness plan every year, and yes, they do the SHI.
Right. So there was a piece to, because again, looking at, and look, all of these people, and what I would say is, and I think you've all mentioned it earlier, right? The SHAC can bring other people in as necessary, but do we need them all there every day? I would argue no, which is why Ms. Aguilar and I sat and went through and said, which of these positions are need to be there each and every week? And just so you know, I think you skipped. Did you skip Ms. Aguilar?
I did. I did.
So it's
There's my 7.
Okay, so just for the ad hoc, I just want to make sure I understand. So PE and health would be one.
Guidance services.
Guidance services would be, well, it'd be the second one, because I'm just going down the list with that. NEISD communications, I'll just call it third. I'm just going down the list now. Health services would be a 4th one for consideration. Administration would be a 5th one. NEPD would be 6, and then another P and health department would be 7. Is that correct, just for, as we discussed in the ad hoc?
Because I had written down that communications was as needed.
Okay.
But
if that's
but maybe that needs to be 8 and not
Okay,
7.
and that's what, but those are
So-
the areas identified, so that when the three of us discuss and look at it as options, we can have those conversations.
So how about once we get that list corrected, we'll send it to you? I mean, what, Dr., because you had it, I know you had it somewhere.
And to piggyback, Mr. Byer, there was 51 slots on here, so we need to probably delete one of the last 2 employee slots that are empty, because there was 51 slots on here, and we say 50 is in the or in the PDF.
I thought it was 50 up to, through that last district employee. I think
It was, I didn't know if counting the trustee as a slot or not.
You know, that is something that is an ex officio, what?
Yes.
It does not count as a slot.
And
I know it's not
non-voting.
voting, I just didn't know if it counted as a 50 member, because it's on the membership list. That was my question.
So, and I guess where I'm trying to go with that, like with those last 2 unfilled spots, I would offer that we can
Leave them blank?
just leave them blank or eliminate
Right.
them. I guess the point would be is now we're starting to get to a point where we have the core staff at the meetings, and then those that need to present, as has been suggested, that they can show up as needed. And
Agreed.
Ms. Aguilar can have them come and present, or if the committee requires something specifically. And as far as the Board of Trustees, I know we've gotten several emails about that taking a parent spot. I want that to be clear. It's not taking a parent position on the SHAC. And I would also say that any one of us as a trustee, I believe, are welcome to attend a meeting and observe.
Yep.
I mean, we're not there to provide any input, ask questions, make any comments, but you're always welcome to go to a meeting, observe, and get whatever information is being discussed in those
Is that
meetings.
something that's a very good point, because I have been on committees where, as on another board, where I could attend meetings but not participate. And Terry, I think you're familiar with the legislative issues of that. So is that something that should be clarified in ad hoc, that if a trustee attends a meeting, that you, I mean, you're talking open meetings, violations, and all kinds of stuff, just as a reminder to all of us that we can attend these meetings,
And
but
I
we
attended one
cannot
last.
speak.
I attended one last year and just out of the wall and watched for a little while
Yeah.
left. And exactly,
Cannot
but we'll be
speak,
very
yeah.
clear. We'll
Yeah.
discuss in the ad hoc exactly, just so
Exactly,
there's
yeah.
absolute
Okay.
clarity. That's a good point.
And really, no more than 4 should be attended.
Well, that's
Correct,
a,
and
that's
that's
a,
what I was gonna say.
and we-
Another
we'll
good
talk
point.
about
More than
that.
3, I
We'll
should
talk about
say.
the process if you're going to attend. Please advise so we
And
don't
as
get
a,
for.
as an
Exactly.
advisory
Great point,
committee,
yeah.
obviously, they are bringing recommendations to us. So we're going to get the information, and we can have the people here to give us answers to the questions we have. So I'm not suggesting that all 7 of us need
Agreed.
to go to.
Well, I don't
every
think our
meeting.
schedule's well out, but yes.
But I don't want it, I didn't, from the emails we were receiving from some individuals, I didn't want it to look like our board president was in there actively voting and making comments and influencing what was being said there. So they are open meetings by law, and so.
But I think having a trustee there, as if nothing else, as a liaison, is a very valid point. I think that's a very good thing.
Yeah.
As a recognized member of the group, although non-voice, non-voting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, DISH has some shack bylaw recommendations, and one of the things that it says in there is that most shacks assign a school board member.
That's in the T-Shack guide, the big document.
And state that they don't have.
It does
so.
mention that. We'll look at that document as well.
Okay. All right, so we have the 7.
Just, I'm sorry, Madam President. Those of you that are serving on the ad hoc, if I would just ask as you're looking at it, to consider rather than when we're looking at whatever you all decide about staff, don't look at it from the lens of a name. Look at it through the lens of the position.
Agreed.
Okay.
Position.
Just to save, because look, people will inevitably turn over, and bringing back a name when the name isn't really, it's really the position that they hold. So I'm just letting you all know that, just as it's top of mind,
Good
because as we went through it, rather than you thinking, well, how is that person on there? We didn't appoint them. Well, that's just a new person in this position.
The staff position that whoever
Yes, sir.
holds that. Agreed.
That's correct.
Okay, well, definitely.
Okay, so the 7 people are, starting at the top, PE and Health, which is Aguilar, Guidance Services, Health Services, School Administration, NEPD, and then the 2 PE and Health. That's our 7.
Agreed.
Okay, so is,
Are we ready for a motion?
sure.
I move that we approve the 2022-23 shack list as amended and discussed with the names and the reduction in the staff slots. And we will ensure that all names are submitted to Dr. Micah by tomorrow for the ones we add.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. The motion carries.
May I
Oh,
say?
yes.
Mr. Hilliard, what if the board is okay with it, what we will do, since you've listed the names and we've written them down, we'll put the list together and send it to you all, and then you can just correct it as necessary.
Okay, and send you the email
Sorry,
and
name.
contact
We'll
information.
just, what we'll do, all I'm gonna send is their name, and this is under, Lee, it's gonna be Jessica Esslinger, Victor Tobar, Ronald, I'm not sure how to say Ronald's last name, but that's okay, Ryan O'Donnell. And that way then you can verify it as an individual trustee, and then we will exclude those folks from the district in here as well. So that way then it's a clean list rather than me trying to keep up with 7 emails.
Fair.
And then we're trying to, I'm afraid we're gonna lose something in context.
Okay.
So we will correct it, we will send it to you at some point tomorrow. Then if you all will just respond with an affirmative to me that yours are correct. Fair enough? That way then, you guys don't have to, many of you have jobs and you don't have time for this. We will make time and get it done. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
I do have one last thing on this item. I had spoken to one of the parents from District 6 that had a conversation with you, Mr. Hilliard, said it went really well, but had a concern because they said that you asked why they voted a certain way on the health curriculum.
Oh, yeah, I was curious. Yeah, I did. But
And-
that's a conversation between me and her, but yes, I
So
did.
I'm curious how you know that, because I don't know how the individual members voted.
I think it's all in records. If you can go and that information is available to see who voted, if you look at it.
Okay. Because that was not something presented to us,
No.
correct?
No, I don't think it was presented to the board corporate necessarily, no.
Okay. All right, item C, discussion and possible action regarding proposed revisions to board policies BQA local and BQB local. Could we take a 5-minute recess? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess at 7:15.
No, that's what you were doing when you're accusing him of. No, that's what you're doing by saying that if it's an intact family or it's not, you're making it. Well, that's what it really boils down to.
Okay, are we ready? The time is 7:20. All right, BQA and BQB local. So, the last meeting, we asked, so in our packet was proposed changes to BQA and BQB local based on conversations and then some proposals that Mr. Hilliard. So let's look at BQA first. Are there any comments or changes based on this draft of BQA?
Madam President, I had a couple questions. I'm assuming we're talking about page 12 of our package and the, not my proposal necessarily.
Yes,
but
I'm sorry.
The other. Just make sure we're talking the same thing.
Yeah. The one that looks like this?
Yes, ma'am. That's to make sure. So I had a couple comments. It talks about the chairperson shall be selected annually in the fall by members of the DIC. Do we need to say they need to be a resident or not? And then the other piece of that same thing is the chairperson will invite all DEIC members to board meetings where the DEIC will be discussed. That way they have the opportunity to know that their work is being presented to us, and then all those DEIC members can attend if they want, but I think it just that they know that that's a responsibility of the chairperson were the two things I would offer.
Does that need to, where is that?
I'm on page, right now I'm on page 12 of our package under chairperson.
Okay.
So my question is, does it need to be a resident? Because I know that the chairperson is not necessarily going to be a parent, although we do have some parent members on there. But I don't know if that's something we need to consider or not worried about, and that may not be an issue.
Okay, so the chairperson is elected by the members of the DEIC, and so the composition is its parents, and it's 2 community members and 2 business representatives.
Right.
And it's saying that the business representatives don't have to reside or operate a business in the district. So your question is, does the chairperson have to reside? And I guess my thought is, who typically is the chair of DEIC? Is it a community or business person, or is it typically a staff or?
Sorry, my glasses. They're for reading, not for seeing, obviously. So it's actually whoever is elected, so it's one of the DEIC members. And so they can nominate themselves, or one of the members can make that nomination. Essentially, their role is to facilitate the meeting. So that way it's not the voice of administration driving the conversation, it's actually one of the members driving the conversation.
So is there a typical person?
It could be a staff member, it can be a parent, it can be a community member, it can be any member who has been selected for DEIC.
So I don't think we need to have a residence requirement, because if it's a staff person, we can't.
Understood. That's okay. That was my question. I wasn't sure of that, but I wanted to know if under the chairperson that for them to invite the members to the board meetings where the DEIC will be discussed as a way for them to see their work in action. Is what I wrote down for consideration, adding a sentence in there, but I don't know if other people think the chairperson should do that or not.
Do you think that needs to be written in policy, or can that just be a, hey, you're invited to do this? And
I just don't know, have they been invited in the past would be my question, because this obviously is the mechanism where we say this is what we as the board would like to see. So I don't know if that's being done informally, but.
Not formally, we don't invite them. We let them know when the board meeting is, because we're taking agenda items. Okay. The meetings are, of course, streamed, and so they can watch those. But I mean, I have no concern with.
Okay, I'm just asking the question. If nobody else is concerned about it, I guess that doesn't necessarily. I just want to make sure that they're getting to see the fruits of their labors if we do it. The next question under the meetings it talked about, and I like the update about doing some of this stuff, but the public meeting requirement, that's not clearly stated. Was there a public meeting last year that was sent out to the community? Because I'm not aware of it.
The public meeting is actually after the TAP-R comes out.
Okay.
And so that's brought to the board, and that's considered the public meeting.
So the board meeting is the public meeting?
But
Correct.
it is, but we can do an extra one for them separately. But essentially, that's the one that we would invite all DEIC members to participate in for the purpose of a public meeting, because it's to go over the district data.
Okay, because then the other piece would be the public comment piece at that meeting, so that the public can provide additional feedback. Because this year we heard a lot about the calendar and the concerns with that, but that was all done after the fact, after we'd already voted and the DIC had done their work. So those type of things where we get that feedback on the front end, which is what we're supposed to do. And so I don't know how we're doing that piece of it. I know there's some new stuff down here for feedback, which is good. And I saw that under the community input piece. But so you're saying the public meeting is
The public meeting is the board meeting, which is during any board meeting, any agendaized item, people can comment from, which is why that covers that.
Okay.
So that is how that piece, because as you all know, right, the board meetings are open to the public.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that suffices the.
Okay, so
the
that is
component
our
of the
public
law.
board meeting that they refer
Correct.
to. Okay.
Which is why we post it, we put it in the paper, we do all sorts of things to follow the law that requires that notification.
Okay. That's good. I got a couple more, but keep, if you got input.
No, I need to comment on this chairperson. Okay, I was kind of, I guess, spacing out, but all right, you're saying that the chairperson or this, can be somebody out of any ISD? Am I understanding that?
Well, if
Or-
they're a staff person, they may not live in our district. They may live in
Understood.
Comal or.
And then the business person is somebody that can be outside?
Can be
or
outside.
something?
Yes.
They don't have to reside in the district.
Okay, what is the reason behind that on the business person?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is illegal that we have to have community members, and so they're business. So essentially, they're being part of the DEIC because you're making educational decisions for future goals around college, career, et cetera, et cetera. And so all businesses don't live necessarily at any ISD, but we want business partnership.
There's no reason, though, we as a board couldn't say we do want them, because we have a large district, 140-something square miles. I think a lot of businesses, we could make it a requirement as a board that they reside or operate in the district. Is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, because I'm thinking, who better to make decisions for our district than people that reside and have a vested interest in the development of our district?
Well,
Right, but I think the point, and I did some research on this and spoke to some folks about it, because our students aren't just going to work within Northeast boundaries. And so I think the spirit of that is that it could be somebody from Port SA, because they're involved in aerospace and cyber, two things that we're fully invested in. So I think the spirit is that it's that, we may, and I'm trying to think in, you've got to take it outside of our context and put it in a small town in rural Texas. And they may be getting somebody from another side of it, right? So it's kind of got to encompass everybody. Ultimately, look, you're the board, you can do what you want with it. It's your policy. But I think that's it, is that by saying they have to reside in our boundaries, are we really encompassing all the businesses in our area that our students may or may not be seeking employment in? The answer is I don't know.
That's logical. Never mind. That's a good point. Really good point. Yes, I wasn't thinking beyond that. Okay.
I'll keep going. I got a couple more, but I'm sure the other trustees do. But under the community input, number one, it talks about sending it out to the members, the principals. I think we should add, I think it says then the principals will share with the parents or the community via the SMORE or however they do their parent communication, just so of that awareness, because it's obviously they do CIC piece, but there's a district level piece or some other way that I see it's posted on the website, but how is the community going to know that the information is there? We're posting the information, but we're not. How is that getting pushed out to them to be able to know what's going on?
Yeah,
Oh,
and I will tell you, Mr. Hilliard, because I just attended a session really about communicating with the public. The answer is I don't know. And I wonder if we shouldn't start talking to some of our community about, because you brought up earlier, right, 70% of them don't have kids in our district. And they may have one. I'm pretty sure we got to communicate with them in a slightly different manner than probably our parents, right?
Sure.
So maybe that piece is looking at how do we need to do it? Because I'm certainly not going to sit up here and be omniscient and say this is the route that it's ever going to reach everybody, because I don't think it does. So I think, I'd like to explore that a little bit and say, like, what is it? How do we, we can post it on our webpage, we can do, but I'm not sure the people that don't have children in school are going there.
And they don't, because I've asked a couple of the folks
Right.
that I've spoken to that don't have kids, and they're like, yeah, we don't see anything communication, like the Northeast newsletter goes out, and some of those bigger things,
Right.
they're not going to see the day-to-day stuff,
Sure.
obviously. And as long as we need to have a process to
Sure.
outreach, and I don't know that I have the answer either,
Right.
but obviously this is part of our board district
Yeah.
scorecard goal. So
Right.
How are we going
And-
to do that to share that information
And
better?
in the scorecard, we're talking about this, about really how do we reach out? Because again, even if principals send it out, it's going to get some people. It's not going to get the broader community. And I think what we have to do, if for those of you that were on the board a while ago, we did that, and we found that's why we pushed to Facebook, because 68% of our community were on it, and so we started really using it. But I think it's probably time to revisit that again and start looking at what is the best mechanism to communicate with everyone. Because as I went out and spoke to D9 or D10, those are different, those are community. That's important people to listen to. But they're not getting some of the information we're pushing up because they just don't watch it. Mr. Byer, you brought this up with me in some of the meetings you've gone to, is, those folks aren't necessarily watching some of this because they don't have kids, but they're interested.
Right.
They have a vested interest in it. But so how do we communicate them? Answers, I don't know.
So-
I don't know.
So I'm wondering I'm sorry, Ms.
Oh,
Williams,
no,
go ahead.
that's okay. I was just going to look at adding, at one point, I think we also actually mailed out newsletters or things like that, which cost a lot of money.
True.
And then found out, well, the most effective way, like Dr. Micah said, everybody's on Facebook or social media. So, really you're only going to get a good representative sample.
So I think related to that, if there's a way, maybe to address that concern, keeping this at a policy level and not getting into how we
Right.
actually, do we want to add a bullet that says, or somewhere in there add, and distribute to community as appropriate. And
As
then that's-
possible. Yeah, I think so. That to me is policy-wise, because that's the intent, and then the execution happens
Yeah.
from Dr. Mike and the staff.
So provides some.
Yeah, at the top.
Well, if that's,
Yeah.
that is the question, is that
Oh,
the
yeah,
intent?
it's on
Just as we're having the conversation so that we
right there.
understand, because.
Yeah, it
the-
says superintendent or designee shall ensure that the district level council obtains broad-based community, parent, and staff input and provides information to those persons on a systematic basis.
Right.
It says shall include, but not limited to.
But not limited to the
Right.
following. So,
So,
I think keeping it at the policy level, I guess I'm comfortable with the fact that it's on the record that we're looking to get this implemented, and then it's up to us to keep watch on that, and as,
And that's
if
fine,
we
just
have,
'cause-
if we have any issues or whatever, then we can bring those before the full board.
Yeah, because the DEC website, not everyone that's going to go there or know to look there. So as
Right.
long as we're working with the intent of spreading it, that's kind of what the focus. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think your district scorecard does a very nice job of focusing in on how we're communicating. So I think this is an opportunity to leverage that document to start looking at this as well.
Okay. On the next page, I guess it's page 13 of our document, talking about the parent nominations. So obviously in our informed oversight and governance role, trustees selecting, because it looks like there's one from each cluster so that there's equal representation, which I think is great. But the question is this the principals are picking it? Because they already pick at the CIC, or should the principals make the recommendations and the trustees kind of look? Was just a thought I had as we've been discussing these broader policy issues, was the question I had on that. So I don't know if there's any thoughts from the other trustees on that particular thing. Because I'm not sure, I like, by the way, there are a lot of nice updates to this, so thank you to the staff and Dr. Mike and them. Not quite as much as maybe I would have personally wanted, but it's not about me, it's about us continuing as a board to improve. So there's a lot of good updates here, but just the parent process, as we've talked about that parent input and how we're going to do it. Any thoughts? Is everybody else comfortable with just letting the principals do it?
I feel comfortable with the way it is.
Yeah,
but-
and I was trying to find the language. I thought I'd highlighted in the sort of the district level decision making where I thought it left it open to that we didn't necessarily, we don't have to actually appoint those people. And I think I'm personally comfortable with letting our community choose those representatives
Okay. Ms. Larry, you go with
through
that?
that process.
Anybody else? Oh, just,
Yeah, I'm just reading the nomination procedure,
Yep.
and with that being open to the community, I think that's a good opportunity for our community's voice to be heard and nominate some people to be participating.
And I think, those parents that are at a campus every day or not even every day, but are getting those communications, have the ability to say, hey, I want to
Yeah.
volunteer myself.
And for everyone who's watching, the new changes is that all NEISD parents will be notified in August about the nomination procedures and provide a link to get the ballot. And then the applications will close the third Monday after the first day of school. So usually late August, early September. So it provides a very clear process, which is what I'm happy to see. And it lets everybody that wants to participate have the opportunity if they so choose. So, okay.
Just so you all aware, we'll do that in several different ways, notifying the community. So it's not going to be just an email. It'll be on the webpage. We'll push it through social media. We'll do it in a variety of ways. But again, as we go through this district scorecard process, and we're looking, this again could be one of those opportunities to lean in on and say, here's a different way as well to improve the process.
And then the last question I had was, the biannual review is required by law of the DEIC policies, which these are. And is there something we need to put in here for us as the board to remind us of that, to make sure, and then it obviously reminds the DEIC chairperson, but obviously where we need to put it on our strategic calendar, but obviously there's a requirement in the law for that biannual review. I don't think this one's may have been done for a while, so that was one of the other concerns, because we know some of these are pretty dated. So how do we capture that piece of our policy making that we're required to as a board with the law? I'm open. I didn't know if it was worth putting right in here just easily.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah, no, every 2 years,
Yeah, by law, and I
we are
forget it's
required to review it.
1152G
I
or E.
thought BQ Legal had it,
Oh,
but possibly not. And my point with that is that it would be within the district to have that as
Yeah.
part of their routine.
Yeah. Just 'cause I know they've been quite a few years since either of these have been, I think, looked at by the board. So just to make sure, whether it's a strategic calendar or something, but that we, as a board, hold ourselves accountable to that piece that we're required to by law.
And it's, I don't know I don't recall if it's in BQ Legal, but I know it is for sure in Chapter 11
Yes,
of
yeah.
the Education Code.
Yeah. I got BQA legal here. Let me see if it. Because I know it's in the league, actually in the law, and I'm just trying to remember how to put. I don't think it was in the BQ.
Yeah, at least every 2 years, each district shall evaluate the effectiveness of the district's decision-making and planning policies, procedures, and staff development activities related to district and campus-level decision-making, and planning to ensure that they are effectively structured to positively impact student performance. This is from the Texas Education, yeah, there you go. BQ, says, I thought I saw it. So it did make it into BQ Legal. So that, to me, means we need to make sure that that's
Yeah, just how do we as a board
happening
make sure
by-
that
by
we're
law.
doing that piece of our policy?
And I had kind of interpreted that to mean that we are, as it comes to us, I mean, we're seeing something every year, basically. And so, I mean, I guess, I
That's-
don't know.
that's my
it's
question, is
necessarily
that
a
every- 'cause
formal, it's part of our board presentations.
But not the policy itself, all the other
Not
pieces.
the policy
I mean, that's
itself.
what I understood the law to say was we have to review the policy biannually in
Right.
addition to that. And so that's the policy piece that we can incorporate into, our public meeting where the board gets briefed. We just know that we need to do that piece as well. And if there's any discussion, there may not be most years, but just so that we're following that piece of the law.
Well, and so I'm reading this, it says at least every 2 years a district. That means us.
Correct.
Oh, doesn't mean us.
So what I've learned after reading all these policies is if it says the board, that means you. If it says a district, it means me and my staff. So I would say, based on the surveys and things, this is part of that procedure, correct? I mean, shall evaluate the effectiveness. Can we do better with it? Yeah. I think we can do better with it, but, because, yeah, when you read policy, when they want you all to do something, they clearly state the board.
Because I thought in 11-252D, it said the board's biannual review of the effectiveness of the policies related to DEIC
Yeah.
and CIC.
So I'm just reading the BQ legal,
Okay.
and it references Ed Code 11.252D.
Yeah, that's what I have in front of me.
Right. So is it?
Board, it says board's biannual review of the effectiveness of the policies related to the DEIC.
That's interesting. The BQ legal doesn't mimic
Yeah.
that language.
Yeah, and so that's why I just want to make sure that we're aligned, because
Right.
that's a board thing versus
Sure.
being, that's in 11-252D is what the law says,
Okay.
the board, versus the BQA.
Well, I know, but I'm deeper. I'm geeking out now a little bit and thinking that they didn't even capture the spirit then.
No.
Come back, you said, which one did you say?
I thought
11-251.
11-252D. If I'm reading it right, the board's biannual review.
252D or 251?
252D. If I have that right, let me dig it out of here.
Well, in BQ legal, it says, at least every 2 years, a district shall evaluate the effectiveness. But it says Education Code 11252D.
But I think the code says the board, doesn't say the district, which is the conversation of the responsibility. That's what I get. I've got it here somewhere. I'm trying to find it. I've got 254 here. I got it. I think if we put it on the strategic calendar, that may be one way to ensure, just to make sure
Yeah.
that we're compliant.
I think maybe what we do is at our annual review, right, each year, we bring something back as well at that same time. I guess my thing is we need to incorporate it into, because again, going back to your scorecard about effectiveness and efficiency, right? Maybe the time of the year is to do it is when we give the public meeting, and then we provide that feedback at
Actually,
that time.
I may stand
Here it
corrected.
is, and
I
it
may-
says-
It does say the district shall.
Each
evaluate.
district shall
I stand
evaluate.
corrected. So
Yeah.
that one is the district, so I am incorrect on that particular one.
I thought my internet abilities had failed me, and I printed off
well,
the old
it's
version.
because there's so many
But
of
I
them.
printed it too, and I found it.
Yeah,
I was
okay,
like-
no,
Just
so
took-
it is, that one is, so I just think as long as we're part of our conversation, that's good. Okay, that's, I think all the questions that I had, I know I had a lot of them. So I think those are my questions for that, thank you.
Is what it was. Okay, I'm sorry, thank you. Anybody else have any questions about BQA
Yeah,
local?
I had one question related to professional staff where we list, and I'm not suggesting we have to, this is on page 13 in our packet, where we list, 4 elementary teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, 5 non-teaching. And in sort of the discussion we had previously about committees and committee sizes, has that been an effective use of everybody's time and the resources we have for people to come together at 4:30 and having those voices? Is that enough? Is that too many? Is it just right? It's just more of a question.
So the two functions that they really hold, which is the district improvement plan and district-wide professional development. And so what we do is we had a work session around the DIP, October. Basically, assistant directors for all content areas and all different parts of the DIP created a draft. That draft then goes to all the DEIC members prior, like 2 weeks before we meet. They review the information, then we walk through a protocol, show them how to read the information, what's in there, what's the goals, and then they have an open document to capture their thoughts, things that they saw that we can consider, and then that information stays open for 3 weeks after the meeting, where they can still input information. Then it closes, and then all of the assistant directors look at the new information and say, is there some opportunities to refine some of our goals, some of our strategies, et cetera? And so your question about, is the time being useful?
No,
and
the
those
question
folks-
is the size of the committee.
I should have been a little more clear.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
I know. You've had a busy day and it's late.
Yes.
Because I was like, I'm going to interrupt them at
The
some
size-
point because
the
the
size
question is
But it's
is
good
the
to hear-
size unwieldy Or is it
No,
just right?
It's just right.
And can I piggyback on you, Mr. Byer? You asked a question, but you made me think, and I think I heard you correct, Mr. Jared, that you provide all the DEIC members a couple weeks in advance, basically the agenda, so they had the opportunity to look at the DIP, but they also talk to fellow staff members to get additional input, because to me, that's the key piece of getting that input, so they're getting a broad-based input. Okay, so they're getting the agendas in advance and opportunities to have some time to discuss and collaborate with their fellow
That is
teachers
correct.
and community members. Okay, that was a good piece. Thank you. Thank you, sir, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Byer?
No.
All right, anybody else have anything about BQA local?
I just want to, this is just so well put together, so thank you to whoever.
Thank you, staff.
Did this. Thank you to staff.
Good job, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's move on to BQB, because this is one action item. So BQB local. Questions regarding BQB local?
Yes, Madam President, I had just two, I think. It's down in the communications, Pete, about the public annual meeting, reporting the book. How is that going to look? Because I know it says they're going to do certain things, but obviously that's one of the requirements. Talks about posting the minutes and all this. Some of these updates are really good to get and receive feedback. But how are we going to do the public annual meeting again, I guess? Because obviously it's not a board meeting, it's at the campus level.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong. Should you all approve this evening, Mr. Jarrett and I have met about really shifting this responsibility to an individual on his staff. Because one of the things that we want to make certain is not only that the expectation, well, first of all, we're going to obviously review this with our campus principals because they're in charge of making sure it happens. But after that, then there's going to be a process, and I don't know what that process is tonight, because quite frankly, we're not going to spend a bunch of time creating a process until I have a policy. Sure. But Mr. Jarrett has looked at his staffing and said, really, this needs to be how's this person can do it. They're super organized and peace, because that way then it's not only that they're supposed to do it, but they have to report it and that we're tracking it. And
Right.
so that there is some oversight to this has been submitted, giving reminders. Because up to this point, it wasn't really owned anywhere per se. And so it's going to give some ownership to an individual for some oversight of those meetings.
That's wonderful. Okay. And the only other question I had was on the composition, going back to what Mr. Byer asked about the BQA, but it talks about 2/3 be classroom teachers, but it doesn't give a specific size. And then obviously there's also 2 parents that will be on there in the committee, but to make sure, and a community member as well, but to make sure that it doesn't get, there's a balance there, do we need to have a range, like a cap or something, so that it doesn't become extremely more of like a staff meeting? We took that.
I'm just going to tell you, as a former principal, and I've got 2 former principals sitting right there. How many people wanted to serve on that? I promise you, I never had more than about 5 staff members, maybe 6, because they just, teachers are busy. They just are, and they've got so much to do. And so, I mean, look, it's your policy. I'm unaware of a huge one.
Well, I think.
Okay. No, and that's fine. I wasn't sure because it
That's
piggybacked
why
off Mr. Byer's
I'm
question.
asking them, because maybe I'm the anomaly, but I led 4 campuses, and I promise you, it was. That's why I had to put up a sign-up sheet for committees every year.
Okay. Because I just want to make sure
Otherwise, I
obviously
didn't get them.
that parent voice is tied in with the staff, working collaboratively. And I do appreciate the updates here, definitely with the camp. Also, so community knows, all campus parents will be notified in August about the CIC nomination process, similar to the DEIC. So this is an opportunity for us to get the community more engaged, the parents and all of those folks. So this is a very good step forward. I do appreciate the updates to that. So that's all the questions I have, Madam President. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, so do I have a motion to adopt the changes to the policies proposed by administration along with any additional revisions approved by the board?
So moved.
Ooh,
Ms. Williams?
Ms. Williams, do I have a second? Mr.
Second.
Byer?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 3, new business for possible board action, A, consent. 1, minutes from September 12, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 4, adjournment, and the time is 7:49. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks.